Hello everyone, my name is Marcelo and on this tutorial we will learn how to process documents with UiPath Document Understanding. So we have here some files, so here we can see invoices and W9 forms, and the goal is to extract, to process these documents using document understanding. So document understanding, it's a UiPath framework that facilitates a lot the processing of files. And so these files will be available for download on the description of this tutorial. So we'll see a link where we can download all these files so you can follow easily this tutorial. And now let's just take a look to the steps that involves a document understanding. And here we can see them. So we will apply the main ones. So we will use the taxonomy to define what we want to extract from each document type, in our case invoices and W9 forms. Then we'll apply the Digitize to extract the text from each document. After the Digitize, we will classify each document to know the document type, if it's an invoice or a W9 form. To then, by knowing the document type of the document, we can go ahead to the extraction to extract the information from the document, and then we will apply the export to export so the extracted data, and in our case we'll export the extraction to Excel file. So let's start by creating a new project on UiPath Studio. So let's click here on process. And here the name can be, for example, document understanding. And let's create. So now that our project is created, we'll start by installing two packages that we'll need to use document understanding. So to install them, let's click here on Manage Packages. And now here, let's click on All Packages. And let's start by searching for Intelligent OCR. And let's install these packages that will give us the needed activities to make use of the document understanding framework. So let's install these packages. And now let's search for another one. So here, let's search for document understanding. And let's install also this one, the UiPath.documentunderstanding.ml.activities, that will give us activities to make use of the machine learning document understanding features as it says here. So let's click on install. And now to install these packages, let's click here on save. And now let's just wait. And now that the packages are installed, if we go here to activities and search for document understanding, we can see activities related to the document understanding framework. So let's start by opening now the main workflow. And first, we'll need to define the taxonomy. So on the taxonomy, we will define the document types that we have to process, and also the data that we want to extract from each document type. So to define the taxonomy, here on the top, we can see now a new button after installing the packages. So here we can see the taxonomy manager, where we can define so the taxonomy. So let's click here. And first we have to add our first document type that we have to process. So let's click here on document type, and here let's enter the document type name. So let's enter here invoice, and let's click on save. And now that we have defined our first document type, let's click on it. And now here we can find the data that we want to extract for this document type. So to start, let's click here to add a new field. And so from the invoices, so I'll just open here an example. We'll extract the company name of the invoice. So here on our first field on the taxonomy manager, let's enter company name here on the field name and the field type. So here we can see that we can define the type of the field. So in this case, it's a name. And now let's click on save and we have defined the first field so that we want to extract for the invoice. Now let's add another one and let's enter here invoice number and field type. Let's define here text and let's click on save. So we'll extract the invoice number from each invoice. Then we want to extract also the invoice date. So here let's add a new field and enter date. And here field type, let's here define the type date and let's click on save. Then so we'll extract also data from the invoices tables. So here we can see that on our invoices, so I'll just open the other two, they have different layouts, but they have data in common. So they have the invoice number, the company name, this table, the invoice date. And so we can see that on these two invoices, we have a table with the description of the item and the total, so the line amount. So here to define a table on the taxonomy manager, let's add a new field and let's enter here items. And now here, very important field type, let's define as a table. And now when we click on save, we can see that we can find the columns of the table. So the first one, let's define the description. So here, let's define description. And the field type will be basically text. And then we'll have the line amount. So here, let's add a new column. And we can enter, for example, line amount. Or we can also enter total. It's the same. And here, let's define the field type as a number. So now that we have defined the columns of the table, we can click here on invoice to close. And in last, we want to extract also the grand total, so the total of the invoice. So here, let's add another field, and the field type will be number. So now that we have defined the fields to extract for invoices, let's add another document type, so the W9 form. So to add it, let's click here on taxonomy, and let's add so a new document type. And here the name can be, for example, W9 form. And let's click on save. And now let's click here to open so this document type and be able to define the fields to extract. So from W9 forms, we want to extract the person name, as we can see here, also the business name, then the address, and in last we want to check if the document is signed or not. So we can see here that we have some samples. For example, this one, it's not signed. So we want to check if it's signed the document or not. So let's start by defining here the name. So here on the taxonomy, let's add a new field. And here can be person name. And the field type will be a name. Then let's define business name. And the field type, a name also. Now let's add so a field for the address. So here let's enter address. And so now the field type, let's select here address. And in last, so let's add one for the signature. So here the field, let's name it signature. And now very important, field type will be a boolean. So a boolean, it's basically a true or false. So if it's signed, it will have a value of true, this field. If not, will be false. And so let's click here on save. So now that we have our taxonomy defined, we can close the taxonomy manager. And now if we go here to project and refresh our project directory, we can see that was created a folder named document processing, and here we can see a file taxonomy.json that contains basically the fields, the document types that we have defined on the taxonomy manager. So now let's move ahead to the next step, that is to create a loop for each file. And so then for each file we will do the digitize, classification, extraction, and export the extracted data to Excel file. So to create the loop, we can use the for each activity, and we have also the activity for each filing folder that facilitates a bit to create a loop. So let's use this one. So let's drag it to our project. And first we need to indicate the folder where are located the files to process. So I will just click on this icon and indicate here the folder. And then we have here some options if we want to include subfolders or skip folders where access is denied, so we don't need to check these options. So now we'll have access to the file path by using the current file instance, by calling this instance. So after create a loop, so the first thing that we want to do for each file is to digitize. So we want to obtain the text from it, and so to do it we'll use the digitize document activity. So here on activities, let's search for digitize, and now here let's drag this activity to our workflow inside of the for each file in folder loop. So first we need to indicate the document path, and we can get it by calling current file dot full name, and by this way we are getting the full path to the file. And then as output we will get the document text, the extracted text from the document. So let's create the variable str document text, and then we need to create a variable that will store the document object model. So this is basically technical information about the document, like the content type, text length, the number of pages, also detailed information such as page rotation, detected language. So it's more technical information about the document. And so let's create here a variable to store this information. So let's create here the variable DOM, for example. And in last, for this activity, we need to provide OCR engine. So let's use the one from UiPath that works very well. So let's use here the UiPath document OCR. So let's drag this activity inside of the digitize document. So let's start by creating a variable that will store the endpoint. So here, let's create the variable str OCR endpoint. And here on variables, let's define the default value of this variable. So here, let's define the endpoint to use this OCR. So let's open here double quotes, and I will just paste here the endpoint. So here we can see do.uipath.com/OCR. And in last, so we need to provide the API key. So let's create another variable to store the API key. So here, let's create the variable str API key. So of course, on production cases, we will not store the API key on a variable. We'll store it maybe on an asset or another secure place. But as it's just a demo, it's no problem. So let's just store the API key on a variable. So we can get our API key to use for document understanding on our automation cloud. So here, after login into our automation cloud, let's click here on more. Then let's click on admin, license, robot C service, and here we can see our API key to use for document understanding. So let's just copy it, and then let's paste the value here on the default for this variable. So let's open first double quotes and then paste. So let's just see if it's working well, if it's extracting the data, or better, the text from each document. So here, let's use just a message box. And let's display the extracted text from the document. So let's call here the variable str document text. And let's just run our process. So here we can see the text extracted from the first document, that it's an invoice. Then we can see from the second. So we can see that it's extracting the text from each document successfully. So we can just stop here the process. And now I'll just add here a log message to log the name of the document that is being processed. So here, let's add a log message. And so here, log label can be info, and the message can be, so let's open here double quotes, and let's insert the text, processing the document. And now here, let's just call the full path to the document, so the path and the document name. So here, let's call current file and then dot full name. To get only the name, you can just use a name. So let's define like this. So now that we are extracting the text from each document, we can move ahead to the next step, the classification. And we could skip the classification if we have only one document type to process, because if we know at start the document type of the documents that we are processing, we already know the data to extract from these documents, and we could skip the classification and go ahead to the extraction. But in our case, because we have more than one document type that we can process, first we need to classify the document to know the document type. To then, by knowing the document type, we know the data to extract from certain documents, because the data that we want to extract from an invoice, it's not the same data that we want to extract from a form. And so after knowing the document type, we know the data to extract for the document. And so then we can move ahead to the extraction. So to classify a document, first, let's remove here the message box. And here on the activities, let's search for classify. And here we can see the classifiers that we can use and the trainers for the classifiers. And to use them, first, we need to use the classify document scope. So let's track this activity after the digitize. And so here first we need to provide the document path. So let's get it. Then we need to provide a document text that is stored on this variable. Then the document object model that is stored on this one. And then in last, we need to provide the taxonomy. And to provide the taxonomy by a variable, let's use here the activity load taxonomy. And let's use it at the start of the sequence. And now here, let's create a variable named, for example, taxonomy. And so this variable will get here the taxonomy that we have defined on the taxonomy manager. So now let's just provide here the taxonomy by calling the variable. Then the output of this activity will be the classification results. So let's create a variable that will store the results of the classification. So here we can, let's name the variable to classification results. And now here inside we need to drop the classifiers or the classifier that will be responsible to classify each document. So here, if we search for classify, we can see here the classifiers. So we have 3 classifiers. The keyword based classifier, then we have the machine learning classifier that uses the power of machine learning to classify each document, and then we have the intelligent keyword classifier. So we'll use this one, the intelligent keyword classifier. So first we must provide the learning file path. So let's create it first. So here let's open the file explorer. And now let's open here the folder document processing, and let's just copy the taxonomy file and then paste, and then rename the new file to classifier learning, for example. Let's just open this file and delete everything that we have here and then save. So now let's indicate the file. And then we must provide API key, so we have it stored on our variable str API key. So now let's click here to manage the learning. And now for each document type, we have to provide some documents to train the classifier. So let's start by the invoice. So here, let's click on Start Training. And let's provide first the file set for training. So let's click here. And now let's here indicate the invoices. Then let's define the OCR engine to use. So let's use the document OCR1 from UiPath. So we need to paste here the API key. And let's click on Start Training. And now that the training is done for invoices, let's train for W9 form. So let's click here on Start Training. Let's here select the W9 forms. Let's select here UiPath Documents OCR. And let's start the training. And now that the training is done, let's here click on Save. And now we must enable the classifier for each document type that we have. To enable, let's click here on Configure Classifiers. And now we can see here Intelligent Keyword Classifier. To enable it for each document type that we have, let's just check this checkbox. So now to check easily the classification given to each document, let's drop here after the classification a log message. And let's first call for the classification results variable that will store the classification given. And we can see that it's basically an array of classification results. And why? Because it's given a classification for each page of the document. So let's say that a certain document has 10 pages, will be given a classification for each page of the document. So in our case, we are only processing documents with 1 page. So here we already know that it's on the first index of the array. So here let's open parentheses and indicate 0 for indicate the first index of the array. And then let's add a dot. And so we want to know the document type ID, so the given classification to the document. So now let's run our project. So now we can see that it's being processed an invoice. Let's see the given classification. And as we can see, the invoice was classified as an invoice. So the classification is working well. All invoices were correctly classified, as we can see. And now we are on the W9 forms, and also all W9 forms were classified as a W9 form. So our classification it's working very well. So now that we are doing the classification, we can go ahead to the next step, the extraction. So after knowing the document type of the document that we are processing, we can do the extraction because we already know the data to extract for the document. So first, here on activities, let's search for data extraction scope. And let's drag it to our project. And so basically this activity will hold the extractors used to extract the data from each document. So first we need to provide some information. So the document path. Then the document text, document object model, the taxonomy. Then we need to provide here the classification result. So as I have explained before, we get here an array of classification results. So we get a classification for each page. In our case, our documents have only one page. So here, let's indicate the first index of our array. And here, document type ID will be used if we have only one document type to process. So instead of indicating the classification result, we could indirectly indicate here the document type ID. So we can know it by going to Taxonomy Manager. And here, for example, invoice, we can see here the document type ID. So in our case, we don't need to indicate because we are doing the classification. So then the output will be the extraction results. So let's create a variable that will store the extraction results. And now here we need to drop extractors. So one or more. So here let's search for extractors. And here we can see the extractors that we can use. So the form extractor, the intelligent form extractor, machine learning extractor, and regex based extractor. So in our case, we'll use the form extractor and the machine learning extractor. So this one use the power of machine learning to extract data from documents. And the form extractor, it's suitable for documents that have a fixed format like the W9 forms, where the format of the document doesn't change. So let's start by set up here the form extractor. And we need to provide here the API key of document understanding that we have on our variable. And now let's click here on manage templates and let's create a new template. So first we need to indicate the document type that we will set up here. So will be the W9 form. And let's give here a template name. Now we need to indicate a template document. So let's indicate here an example. And now here OCR engine, let's use so the UiPath document OCR. And let's paste here the API key. So I will open here the Automation Cloud. And now let's get our API key. And let's click on configure. Let's click here on OK. And now first we must indicate 5 keywords of the first page. So we can indicate, for example, the IRS here. So let's click. And now let's indicate also, for example, here this URL. So now make sure to click first on the control button and then click to don't lose the keywords already indicated. Then we can indicate here, for example, taxpayer. So let's press Control and then click. Now let's indicate also here W9 here. And then we have to indicate more one keyword. So let's indicate here, for example, certification. And now to add these keywords, let's click here. So now that we've indicated the keywords related to the first page, let's indicate so where are located the values to extract. So let's start by the person name, so we can see it here. So to indicate where it's located, let's drag this whole field. So where will be stored will be written the person name. And now let's click here on custom area. And now let's associate this area that we have selected to the fields. So here person name, let's click here on this button. Now we can move ahead to the next one. So business name, it's here. Then the address, we can see it here. So let's do the same thing. And then last, the signature. So the signature will be located here. So let's select this area and let's associate to this field. And it's done basically. Let's now click here on save. And now here we must indicate what are the signature fields. So is the signature one that we have created on the taxonomy. And now we can close. And now for invoices, we'll use the machine learning extractor. And why? Because invoices don't have a fixed format, so they change for each company, they have a different layout. So to handle these scenarios, we can use here the power of machine learning, so it's able to understand the content of the documents and extract the data from it. So let's drop here the machine learning extractor. And first we must indicate the endpoint of the machine learning model. So we can see it here on this page. The machine learning models endpoints for document understanding. So here we can see endpoints for invoices, receipts, passports, purchase orders, and much more. So let's use the one for invoices. So let's copy it. And the URL of this page will be also available on the description of this tutorial, so you can check this page. And now let's click on Get Capabilities. So here, let's just indicate the API key. We could store also the endpoint of the variable, but it's not needed. So now we need to configure the extractors. So let's click here. So let's enable the extraction with the form extractor for our W9 form. So to enable the extractor, let's click here on this option. And now for the invoices, we'll use the machine learning extractor. So here we can see that appears a drop down for each field on the machine learning extractor side. So for example, company name. We want to extract the company name of the company that it's on the invoice. So here we select name, and the machine learning model will search where it's located the company name and extract it and associate to this field. Then for invoice number, we must select here the option invoice and year that it's related to the invoice number. Then date, let's select here date. Now for the table, very important. First, we must indicate here items. And now inside of this table, we can see different keywords. So here we want the description, and here the total of the line on the table. So let's select here line amount. And then to finish here the total, so we want the total of the invoice. So let's select here total. And let's click on save. And we have everything ready for the extraction. So to check easily the extraction done for each document, let's use here the validation station. So the purpose of this activity is to be able to validate the extraction done on each document. So we'll use it just to check to see if the extraction was successful or not. So let's drag it after the extraction. And now let's provide this information, document path, then the document text, document object model, taxonomy, the automatic extraction results that is stored on this variable. And now we can run our project. So let's run it to see how it's being done, the extraction. So we can see here the classification also given to the invoice. So we can see that it was classified as an invoice. And here we can see the classification was successful, was extracted the company name, the invoice number, the date, also the items from the table, and also was extracted the total of the invoice. So let's move ahead to the next one. Also, we can see here the extraction was successful. All the fields were extracted successfully, as we can see. And the same for this document. We can see the extraction was successful. So let's see now the W9 forms. So here we can see that the form was classified as a W9 form, so it's right. So we can see the person name was extracted, also the business name, the address, and here we can see so that this document is signed, and here on signature we have a yes, so it's right. Let's move ahead to the next one. So we can see that the extraction it's being done successfully. So let's see the next one. Also, extraction was successful. We can see the document is signed, and here says a yes, so it's right. And the same for this document. So let's just see the last one that it's not signed. So let's move on. And here we can see extract the person name, business name, address, and in this document it's not signed, so here says a no, so it's right. Our extraction is working properly. So we can now remove this activity. And now let's export the extraction results to Excel file for each document. So first, let's use the activity export extraction results. And so here we must provide the variable that stores the extraction results. And the output of this activity will be a dataset that it's basically a collection of tables. So let's create here a variable dataset underscore extraction. And now that we have the extraction results in the dataset, let's use a for each loop. And now we will create a loop for each table of the dataset. and we write the table to Excel file. So here, let's use the dataset extraction. And so we want to iterate each table of the dataset. So let's add here a dot and enter tables. So now let's just indicate here on the for each the type argument property that we are basically iterating data tables. So now here on the body, let's use the write range activity to write Excel file. So first here, let's indicate the workbook path. So I'll just create here a new folder on the project that will store these Excel files. So now let's indicate here the folder. So let's open the quotes, indicate extraction, slash, and now let's indicate the name of the Excel file that will be created. So here we can use the name of the file that it's being processed. So let's use here current file dot name. And now let's add the Excel extension dot XLSX. Now the name of the sheet, because for each extraction we have multiple tables, so we'll have multiple sheets on our Excel. So the sheet name can be the name of the table iterated. So here let's add table dot table name. Then the data table, so will be here the iterated table on the data set. And now here on the right range, make sure you enable here the add headers. So we'll be added the headers on our Excel file. So let's run now our project to see how it's working. So the invoices are already processed. So now we are on the W9 forms. So our automation already finished. So here on the project panel, let's refresh our project directory. And here we can see that was created an Excel file for each file that we had to process. So let's open one of them, for example, this one. And here we can see the data extracted on certain invoice. So here about items, we can see them here separated on a separated Excel sheet. So let's open another example. So here, the W9 form, you can see here the person name, business name, address, and the signature. So the document was signed. So our solution, it's working very well. So I hope you liked this tutorial. And if you liked it, please give a thumbs up and also consider to subscribe to the channel and enable the notifications bell so we will get notified on each tutorial that I launch here on the channel.